So I had a patient that came in and he was complaining of neuropathy. He was a younger fellow, certainly under 60, probably under 50, and he was in pretty good shape, nice looking guy. He was tall and had a nice frame. He was an athlete, I think he played a couple of sports, and probably a very good athlete. And he came in and his foot was hurting him, and we took some x-rays, didn't see much, and I gave him some anti-inflammatories and sent him home. He came back a few weeks later and he's like, my foot's really killing me, it's swollen. And so I look at it and he's got a big red swollen foot. There was clearly something going on. He literally couldn't fit his foot in his shoe. So I look at his foot and it's puffed up and it's red. It's not like maybe he had a stress fracture where it's a little swollen, maybe a little black and blue, but this was red, like it was infected. And so my first thought was that he was infected, or maybe he had gout, but I wasn't certain. So I got an x-ray, and lo and behold, I was blown away to see that he had multiple fractures in his midfoot. Usually you only see that in diabetics that are uncontrolled or in patients with certain neurological disorders. I asked him, are you sure you're not diabetic? He's never been diagnosed with diabetes. And I asked him some other questions. He didn't have the other conditions either. And so I said to him, do you drink much? I was referring to alcohol. And he knew I was referring to alcohol. And he said, yeah, I drink some. And I said, like, how much do you drink typically? And he's like, Dr. Peters, I drink. And he was forthcoming with the idea that he drank a lot, but he was not so forthcoming with how much he drank. So he says to me, Dr. Peters, I drink a lot. And I said, how often? And he said, every day. I said, you drink alcohol every day? He said, yeah. Well, do you drink a couple beers? What do you drink? He said, I drink a lot. And I said, okay, give me your daily drink. I want to know, like, what does your menu look like? So this guy owned his own business. I think he was a very successful business guy. If not, he should have been, but his drinking was probably the problem if he wasn't successful. But I think he was very successful. He presented a very nice picture and he was a very pleasant person. Tells me that at work, he usually has a few drinks at the end of the day. And I think he said martinis were his drink of choice in his office. And he'd have anywhere from 2 to 4 martinis in his office. Okay, and I said, well, that's a lot. And he said, but that's not it. He said, then I usually go from my office to the bar. And I said, so what will you drink at the bar? And he said, well, I'll usually buy some people around or two in the bar. And he said, and I'll usually have 3, 4, 5, 6 drinks. And you're talking about drinks or you're talking about beer? And he's like, no, I'm talking about drinks. Wow. That is a lot. I've never known of anybody who's developed it from alcohol. I've only seen it in the books. The books say you could get this problem where you break, where your multiple bones break, they crumble, is referred to as Charcot-neuropathic osteoarthropathy. It typically affects people who do not have proper sensation in their foot. So now I'm thinking, this really is probably the cause. And he said, but I'm not done. He said, when I get home, I usually split a couple bottles of wine with my wife. Your wife can drink a whole bottle of wine? And he says, no, she'll usually drink a half bottle of wine. This, by the way, was when I learned that there's usually 4 wine in a bottle. He explained it to me. So I said, so you'll drink a bottle and a half of wine and she drinks a half a bottle of wine? And he said, yeah. And I said, on top of the 4 drinks at your office and the 4, 5, 6 drinks at the bar? And he said, yes. So obviously, I was amazed. I don't drink. So to me, that's, if I have a beer in a week over the course of 2 months, that's a lot. So he said to me, and then I drink beer at the end of the night. And I said, well, how much beer do you drink? And he said, I'll drink a case or 2. I said, a case or 2 of beer after all this? My first question was, how long does it take to drink a case or 2 of beer? I can't even imagine. And he said, well, it usually takes me all night. I usually fall asleep drinking the beer. 100% this is caused by this. But here's the problem. This condition is so serious that if you don't get it under control, you can easily lose your leg. And I didn't want this guy to lose his leg, and he didn't want to lose his leg. And he made that very clear to me. I told him, I said, listen, if you don't want to lose your leg, you better stop drinking. And he's like, I have to stop drinking. So he's like, fine, then I'll stop drinking. I'm like, well, do you think you're an alcoholic? And he says, well, yeah, clearly I'm an alcoholic. And he said, but I'm a high-functioning alcoholic. He said, but it doesn't stop me from doing what I need to do throughout the course of my day. I'm thinking to myself, there's no chance. Any alcoholic will tell you, you're not going to stop just because you want to stop. It doesn't happen that way. you have to go through hell and high water before you get to the point where if you don't, it's probably going to kill you. So, I mean, that's usually the case. Anyways, so I put him in a cast, I believe, or immobilized him in some way, maybe a posterior splint or a boot, I don't know. And he came back 2 weeks later, and we got some x-rays, and nothing had worsened, and his foot was calmed down, the redness was going away, and the swelling had diminished greatly. And so I told him, you're doing great with regards to wearing the boot or the cast, whatever it was. That part is doing great. I said, how are you doing with your drinking? And he says to me, I stopped. I said, you stopped drinking? He said, yeah, I stopped drinking. And I said, and how do you feel? He said, well, I'll tell you, I wake up and I feel much better in the morning. He's like, I usually was a waste until about 11, 12 o'clock. So I said, all right, just continue the path you're on, stay off your foot and stop drinking. Keep the alcohol away from you. So I see him another couple weeks, and now the bones are starting to heal a little bit, and over the next couple months he's healing up, and he's telling me, I'm like, how are you doing emotionally? And he's like, horrible. I'm doing horrible. I'm mean as a snake. I don't even know how my wife is staying with me. I snap at her for anything she says. And he said, like my employees, it doesn't matter who you are. If you get too close to me, I'm liable to bite. But I'll tell you one thing, at the end of the day, he did heal and he did not lose his leg. I haven't seen him in a couple of years, so hopefully he didn't have any repeat performances. When all was said and done, he was splitting a bottle of wine with his wife. He was drinking 2 glasses of wine and she was drinking 2 glasses of wine. And all's well that ends well, and hopefully they're living happily ever after.